Hey there, I'm JimClassic, and you are watching Geekin It. So, October and Halloween have come and gone, which means Geektober has also come and gone. And I have to say, it was fun doing it. I had a few other Geektober videos that I wanted to make. However, I do have a full-time job, and all that adulting does kind of take priority, so they will have to wait until October 2017. So, which is fine. It gives me a little bit more fodder and a little bit more time to plan. So, anyway, it is now November. Ghostbusters Answer The Call is dying. However, it is still rearing its ugly head in its death throes. Was that too dramatic? Yeah, Ghostbusters Answer the Call did turn out to be a little bit of a flop. It did underperform. It never made it to its $300 million mark, which would be the breaking even point, which would have it, which would have made it more likely to have Sony consider a sequel. But it totally fell short. I mean, what? Still 50 million, 60 million short. So, but yeah, it still crops up periodically. Now, the DVD and Blu-ray was released on October 11th this year, and apparently it did pretty well in sales. So, the plug hasn't been fully pulled from its life support yet. And, of course, some people are celebrating its meager success, but probably a lot of it is early holiday shopping and all that jazz. But whatever. I guess good for Sony that the DVD is kind of injected a little bit of extra life into it, but that's not really what I wanted to talk about. Aside from director Paul Feig blaming the failure of the Ghostbusters reboot on the
And get this,
existence and success of the original Ghostbusters, Paul Feig stated in another interview that a Ghostbusters reboot sequel could maybe sorta kinda still happen, possibly, if enough Holtzman fans contact Sony voicing their support of a sequel. The possibility of a sequel is out of Paul Feig's hands at this point, thank God, and it is still on life support because of its poor numbers. To me, this sounds like Sony is still kind of debating on whether or not they should pull the plug on the Ghostbusters Answer the Call sequel, and they're just desperate for one last plea to hear from their few supporters. And that's not a good sign. Really, the movie not only performed poorly globally, but it was shunned by most fans because Sony and Paul Feig trolled, bullied, and shamed people into buying tickets to watch this movie. When you have to bully people into watching your movie, again, it's kind of a bad sign. And the main reason why this movie did so poorly. I mean, aside from the fact that the jokes were bad and the plot was kind of wiggly and, special effects were like 10 years old. When you have to bully your audience, you know you have a failure on your hands. But they're still kind of meagerly trying to do this, to generate a sequel, if enough people call in for support. When the movie first came out, Paul Feig and Sony were beating their chests like lowland gorillas at their apparent success. But now, humbled, Sony is holding out their hands like Oliver Twist, asking for just a little bit more gruel. You liked that little bit of symbolism there, didn't you? Still, Paul Feig specifically mentioned Holtzman fans. Universally, she seems to be the one shining light that came out of this movie, and she's really the only character that anyone would really want to come back to see anyway. I mean, I enjoy watching Melissa McCarthy. I think she's pretty funny. I do like her sense of style sometimes, but in my opinion, I feel she pretty much half-assed Answer the Call. She was just all physical comedy, and I don't know, it just didn't work this time. My personal theory, I doubt she'll even want to bother to come back for a sequel. Just a hunch that I have. I'm not basing that off of anything. I just have a hunch. Kristen Wiig? Well, maybe. Though, in my opinion, I thought her character was pretty dull. I don't even remember the name of the character that she played. Like, that's how little of an impact that she had on me as a viewer. And finally, we have Leslie Jones. After all of the Twitter trolling that poor woman got, she's not going to want to come back. I mean, after all that bullshit, unless Sony parks a dump truck full of money outside her door, and I really don't think Sony would be willing to pay her all that much more. You know, they might just want to recast her or just swap her out for a new character. I really don't think Leslie Jones would want to come back and take that abuse again, because let's not kid ourselves, she probably would. Trolls, well, they're just shitheads, and that's what shitheads do. And from what I understand, Leslie Jones really didn't take all that trolling well, which you can't entirely blame her. So, yeah, I'll be shocked if she would even want to come back. If Sony believes that all of the audiences are going to want to see more Holtzman, I have a feeling that her shtick is going to start to get old pretty fast if she is featured more in the movie. She was a little bit too cartoony even for me and did get a little bit annoying at times. Still, I will say she was the best character in the movie. Annoying, but still the best character. And that's... If anything, a Ghostbusters rebooted sequel will probably cost a lot less money than Answer the Call did, and the actresses might not want to bother with a lower paycheck as well, especially considering all the abuse. They might be like, look, I had to put up with all this crap in the first movie, I want more money. And Sony will probably be like, well, we don't want to pay you that much more money. And then they'll probably be like, well, then we don't want to do it. Again, that's my personal guess. If I was involved in a bad movie like this and I took crap from people, I probably would demand more money for the abuse that I will be expecting to get. I wouldn't be surprised if the actresses involved in Answer the Call are probably thinking the same thing. To me, a Ghostbusters rebooted sequel is just gonna be an uphill battle in winter. If you support this movie, you are probably in for a disappointment, because it will either never happen or it will be worse than the first one. I look at it this way. The Inspector Gadget movie in like 1999, that was a pretty bad movie. And what was Inspector Gadget 2? Wasn't that a direct-to-DVD or direct-to-videotape sequel with a completely different guy playing Gadget? You know, if there is a rebooted sequel, it will probably be a direct-to-DVD movie with all different actresses. And really, you might as well just not have a sequel at all, which, not getting a sequel, I would say everybody wins, in my opinion. I understand that there is a minority of people out there who might want a sequel, but Sony needs to be taught a lesson on how to treat their customers. And sadly, Ghostbusters, of all movies, had to be at the center of it. That is the battleground that they chose, not the fans. You have to understand that. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. Will we see a sequel? Will it never happen? Well, that's still up in the air. It's no longer the 100% guarantee as it was. Now Sony is just kind of humbled by this whole thing, I think. They know they screwed up. They know this should have gone a different way. but they feel committed now. Let's just see what happens. To the best of my knowledge, there is still supposed to be an animated series called Ghostbusters Ecto-Force, which is supposed to be coming out within the next year or two, and it's going to be under the control of the original Ghostbusters director Ivan Reitman. So that makes me feel a little bit optimistic of what's going to come next. I hope. Unless Sony, out of spite, decides to just pull the plug on everything. And that will also be a shame. But anyway, I'm JimClassic, and you have been watching Geekin' It.